Hello, today we have more new Amiga. So this is the A500 that I bought with the not quite working floppy drive, which I fixed up in another video. So that came outside the machine, and in fact it also came with a Gotek drive just hanging out on these wires because the original owner didn't want to modify the casing to have it fitted internally, which, you know, good on him. Don't butcher these old machines. So I'm going to open it up and put the original floppy drive back in now it's restored and working, and have this back to original condition, or as close to original condition as it's going to get. It's in pretty good shape, to be fair. So just going to have a look at it, clean it up a bit, put it back together, see what sort of condition it's in. So it's actually a little unevenly yellowed on the end and the back, which is a pity. Not entirely sure if I want to retro bright it, having read into it a bit more. Although some people have said you can basically just give the thing a bit of sun and it will bleach back out. Maybe I'll try that. Sounds low risk. A couple of days in the sun isn't gonna break anything, is it? This has all its doors left, unlike some A500s I've seen. So we've got the trap door and the door on the end. Here's the back. We've got an extra warranty sticker on the rear, so I don't know if that means it had some extra work done. It's got a 512k RAM expansion that we'll see when we open it. Oh yes, and the correct colour that it should be on the bottom. Now the floppy drive says 1990, says 0291 on it. So I don't know if that makes this a relatively late A500. Guess we'll see when we open it up and find out what revision the motherboard is. Okay, so first surprise is we seem to have security screws holding the thing together. And also there's a lot of screws that look like they're probably just missing. So I think maybe we've just got the screws that hold the case together. So let's find out what else we have. See if I can pop the trapdoor open. Once I've got all these plastic bits off, I'll be able to give them a bit of a wash. Okay, so here is our RAM expansion. So I might as well take this out before going any further. Now I do notice this appears to have a place for a battery and a RTC chip. Now I've no idea what chip would go in there, or what other components you might need. I see this, I believe all these holes are for the battery, and then there's two extra holes here, so maybe it would just work if I got those components. So that's our little RAM expansion. Let's get the expansion slot off the end here. Don't want to risk butchering it, so I'll try a slightly thicker screwdriver. No. Oh, there we go. Got the old edge connector. I'm used to the A1200, so that's quite interesting, the amount of expandability the A500 has in comparison. More compatible stuff, especially with its removable chips. There seems to be a lot of mods you can get now that sit in between various chips on the motherboard and the socket. So we've got all our slots off. Let's get rid of these security screws and see what we've got. That one came out very easily. In fact, all of them. This actually arrived in the post, not in a box. It kind of had the power supply and a load of discs and things just kind of on top of the computer and then wrapped in a lot of bubble wrap, which it seems to have survived just fine, but it's a kind of terrifying Amiga football they'd made. Okay, now if this is like the 1200, I'll want to flip it over before taking it to bits. So I'd like to get these out. Come on, there we go. So 6 screws, can't see any others. Ooh, that still feels, no, okay, it's not too attached. Okay, what wires do we have inside? Ah, okay, that's easier. On the A1200, these lights are attached to the top with a wire you have to unplug, but they're on the board on this. So, other than all these floppy cables hanging out, which actually I'm quite impressed they managed to fit. There you go, that wasn't too bad. So, what do we have in here? Plastics look good. All the holes are, all the you know, screw posts and things are still here. That's good. It's always interesting just going back to slightly older stuff. You have, you know, just look at all these chips on the keyboard board. All looks in fair shape. Of course, what I should really do at some point is take all the keys off and wash them, but that seems a bit brave. Not sure I want to risk that. So let's unplug the keyboard. There we go. Rev 6A on the motherboard. Bit of black tape on the back of this. I don't know if that's standard. So I know the motherboards were up to about Rev 8, I think. So this is not the newest, but 6 is a fairly high number, right? So if this is anything like the A1200, the guts are just going to lift out since there's no screws on the bottom. So they're sort of held in by the back pieces. Oh, I see, the shield is attached with some screw holes. Interesting. Yeah, sorry, attached by the case screw holes when the case is screwed on. So, is this in, are these screws at the front, which are also security screws actually? Is it normal to have security screws on an A500? So I think they're holding the board in. Now maybe these are the empty holes I saw from the bottom, but we're definitely missing some. Okay, there's one here as well. give it a bit of a wiggle. Don't want to put too much force on it. It doesn't seem completely free. Maybe we can lift the top off. That will be easier to see what we're doing. Okay, here's a couple of tabs. More than a couple. Come on, there you go. Okay. It's actually been washed at some point, interestingly. So I guess I'm not the well, we know I'm not the first person to take it apart, but maybe in recent times. Good condition, actually. I think it's got even less corrosion than my 1200 did. Pretty much perfect. Just a little bit. So here's the guts of the thing. Again, more substantial than the A1200, much bigger chips. Is this the 60? Yes, this is the 68,000. Wow, it's huge. The 68020 in the 1200, I think, is not much bigger than one of these RAM chips. Probably slightly wider, but a bit shorter. So I say RAM chips, I don't know if they're actually... Are they RAM chips? Well, these ones are probably RAM chips. Well, these are labelled as RAM chips. Ooh, there's spaces for more RAM. That's interesting. I didn't know you could put more RAM on the motherboard of the A500. Okay, so we've got these super long floppy cables which need to come off. When I put it back together, I'll use the shorter ones which were supplied with it, fortunately. It's really very careful with all these connectors. I don't want to pull and bend anything. Actually, I think these are a little bit bent already. Ah, is this resistor supposed to be here? You never know what Commodore might have put in. It doesn't exactly look factory, but so capacitors. In fact, has this been recapped? Because would these normally be these tall standing up capacitors? Yeah, maybe they would be. Looking at the pads, maybe that is the original style. See, we've got one lent over here. Maybe I can look up the brand or something. It says Shoei on it. I mean, the solder job looks good, so it's hard to tell if that's from the factory or a good refurb or not. But everything in here looks pretty good. Maybe I can find some pictures of other Rev 6As, see if they've got the same capacitors or not. Cool, well, I mean, everything looks good in here. Let's see if we can now get this out. Still a bit sticky. Let's have a look at the back. No, there's none of the sort of connectors appear to be attached through the case or anything like that. So what is causing it to not come out. Something over here. Hopefully you're not all staring at some screw that you can see and I can't. Okay, maybe definitely stuck. It might be this standoff. Maybe there's a bit of plastic sticking up. Oh yes, there we go. Just needed a little bit more height and angle. Okay. Now the metal plate on the bottom actually is attached to the motherboard with the screw things for all the connectors, so that can't easily be taken off. Again though, really good condition, like super shiny. And it all looks well as much as I can see it. And all of our plastics look good. So actually when I said I thought it was missing screws, I mean there's holes here, but they don't look like they've ever seen a screw in them, and in fact they're quite a large hole. Although that said, they're the same size as these holes at the front that do have screws in. But it seems just fine this way. There was no chance of that board moving around inside, and everything looks good. So I'll wash this up and then I can put it back together with the floppy drive. You can just see on the back here how yellow it is. Must have just caught the sun, I guess. Right, give it a wash. Okay, so I figured some stuff out. These are the original capacitors. As far as I can see, everything looks in good condition at the moment though, so should be fine for the immediate future. And all these extra holes at this end are of course for the floppy drive that wasn't in there. So time to put everything back together. Just get the rear ports in place. That's all lined up. We are going to need the top metal shield. Amazing how much shielding these old machines have, which as far as I recall just isn't the case today, but it certainly doesn't seem like it. Right, let's check all our little tabs through. Yep, okay, so we can bend those back down. Okay, they're all in place. Right. I think we're ready for the keyboard. Just seeing how close this metal plate is to all these exposed pins. Seems like it would short them out, but I guess they don't touch because it touches the plastic bit. Seems a brave design though. Don't really want it to go bang. Maybe I should put a bit of tape on there. Couldn't hurt. Oh, or in fact, does it have? Oh, it does. It has a bit of tape already on there. They had thought of that. Good. I thought it might be down to some very tight tolerances that I couldn't rely on anymore. That's all the tabs. Keyboard. Okay, slot that back in and plug it in. Now, how do I make sure this lines up? Ooh, it's held quite well in place by the metal shield, which is nice because I've got to flip it upside down. So the question is, if I put the lid on and turn it over, is it going to stay in one place? Only one way to find out. Actually, I can tell it's not in the right place there because it didn't want to go on straight. There we go. Just pushed it back a bit. Okay, so here's my newly cleaned Amiga. Let's flip it over while holding everything together. I've forgotten some screws, haven't I? That's right, there were some screws from the top holding the electronics in. Why doesn't this want to come off? Okay, well that clips effectively. Right, yes, so underneath the keyboard here we had a few screw holes. So let's put this back together. Hello. This bit's a little bit bendy, come on. There we go. Yes, I now have the correct number of screws remaining for doing the case up. Okay, everything's sitting nice. Right. Oh, lovely. I can see the shiny metal of the floppy drive posts. Now, I think there's 3 screws to hold the floppy drive in properly. So we've got the long I think these are quite long. It feels like it's not. There we go. Now I haven't put the floppy cables in, have I? But that's fine because what we're actually doing is just securing the floppy disk drive in, and then we'll flip it back over and check our work, which is all 100% intentional. Now there's this, so that screw I've picked a bit too big. The question is, can I find one of these fine, can it even focus? Come on, try harder. No. So it's one of these screws with a very fine thread. And oh, there we go. So I just need to try and find one of those smaller headpiece, little round one. Right, if I turn this back, I'm going to have to take these other screws back out again, aren't they? Yeah, it's wedged. This is to be expected when you're dealing with old stuff without the right pieces. Or at least not the original pieces. There we go. Damn you. Right, so let's pop that little screw back out. Wow, that's really stuck. How did it get this stuck? There we go. I didn't really put any pressure on it. I'm not quite sure how that happened. So, floppy disk. Now, no wonder I didn't do the floppy cable, because you can't see it. You can't see the cables. Which means I'm going to have to take the everything back off. Awesome. Loving it. Trouble is, you just don't learn all this stuff until you've done it a few times. I have to say, I think the A1200 is a bit easier. It's quite a clever design, the casing on that. Not that the A500 is bad, it's pretty good. But the A1200 is, yeah, I'm quite impressed with how easily you take that to bits and how few parts they've had to use and stuff. It would be good to get this the right way around. So there's a big one there. So one should be the red line. Yeah, that seems the right orientation. Fortunately, the power cable is keyed, so you can't get that the wrong way around. So I can put this in place, can't I? There. And do all the cables up before putting the top back on. Okay, data, power. Pleasantly surprised by how clean both of my Amigas have been inside so far. Though to be honest, I think there's evidence that both of them have had work done on them in the last few years. So maybe that makes sense. Okay. Okay, so will you cooperate? It's not great. I mean, I don't want to push this sharp edge down really on the cable. If I, yeah, lift the back up a bit. There we go, that looks better. That looks better. It's taken on the right angle. To be honest, I thought this video might be one I'd barely have to edit, but it's going quite long now with all the taking the things apart and putting them back together repeatedly. Okay, so floppy drive's in and actually has cables. We folded the tabs down. We've put the screws down here back in. That looks good. We need a keyboard. Here is a keyboard. back together. Oh, come on. That's back. These holes don't line up great, but hopefully the screw will line them all up as it goes through. And now we're back where we were like 10 minutes ago. So, on, flip, don't need that screw anymore. Kind of forgotten what screw I do need. Wait, this screw's still here. Where'd this screw come from? Okay, so that just never fell out of the hole when I turned it over. So that should go back into the floppy drive. Yep. Let's try the other small one before I do anything else up. So, not really convinced this floppy drive necessarily needs all 4 screws to hold it in, but let's do the job proper. Okay. When I say okay, it's not actually. Come on. There we go. It's got some bite. I definitely needed the long screws to get these in. Okay, that just leaves us with the 6 casing screws to go in the back here. Will it line up? Feels like it should be more together. A little bit creaky at the front. So we'll pop our 512K RAM expansion back in. Again, being careful with these old pins, got to have everything lined up, and then just wiggle it on a bit at a time until it's all the way. And that's as far as it's going to go. Okay, that's that clip. And then we've got the end, which I think just sort of rotates in. That doesn't feel like the right way to put it in, but it required less force. Oh, lovely. Back together, clean. And with an internal floppy disk. So I have to give that a try. Well, here she is in all her original floppy drive glory. And a little bit cleaner. Wasn't in bad shape before, a bit dirty at the back, so not sure if it's really visible, but yeah, lovely. Okay, everything's back together. Let's give it a try. No smoke or immediately dreadful noises. Oh, come on. Oh, really? I think it's still having issues with the disk detection. Okay, pop the disk back in, and it's a bit more successful. I think that disk detection switch is still just a bit dirty or flaky or something. But now it's behaving itself again. It just needs a bit of pressing the switches every so often, and then it works. I can probably live with that level of flakiness. Always amazing how long it can run the disk drive for when these are only 880 kilobytes in total. And this is trying to load one of 4 songs.